violence as an instrument of political force will continue to expand in American cities as local Democratic officials encourage it with hate rhetoric. This is how it unfolded day by day in Nazi Germany when the stormtroopers rioted and committed acts of violence and boycotts.
And now, The Edwin Black Show. Sponsored by the books of Edwin Black, available on Amazon and at booksellers worldwide. And now, here's Edwin.
Hello, this is Edwin Black, investigative journalist, historian, and human rights author of 325 editions in 40 languages in 190 countries worldwide, including IBM and the Holocaust, War Against the Weak, and my latest scoop book, Israel Strikes Iran, as well as a bold new 15th anniversary edition of Nazi Nexus just released. Ours is a show for opinion makers and decision makers, not mass clicks. So subscribe for alerts at theedwinblackshow.com. And if you want to support our work, and we really need your assistance, please visit theedwinblackshow.com/support. Your help, big or small, assures our complete and utter intellectual and uncensored journalistic independence. Go to theedwinblackshow.com and keep us independent. Today's episode is made possible and sponsored without any preconditions, requests, or stipulations by my bold new 15th anniversary edition of Nazi Nexus, available everywhere across the planet in 12 paperback, hardback, electronic, and other audiobook editions. And it's co-sponsored by members of the San Diego Jewish community and one member of the Brookline, Massachusetts Jewish community. That said, remember, I only speak for myself, and the same goes for any of my guests. Today, we welcome viewers once again from across America, including our 4 watch parties in the villages. Got to get back down there. Newton, Mass., Chicago, and Tampa Bay, led by our intrepid Harvey. Overseas, I see viewers logged on from most of our usuals: Australia, New Zealand. Let's see, we got Great Britain here, Canada, Germany, Holland, Monaco, France, Italy, Poland, Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, our big one in the country of Panama, and Israel, plus other nations. The Edwin Black Show, along with our YouTube site, speaks frankly and without tremor to a fragmented world seeking better understanding of our tormented past, our present very, very tense, and a turbulent future still uncertain. By the way, stay tuned for my special word of wisdom at the very end of the show, just before I sign off. We'll get to our sizzling questions in about 15 minutes after these items. First, a word about the amazing San Diego Jewish community, which is largely, in its most vibrant part, Mexican Jewish. That means here in La Jolla, the Jewish people speak Spanish openly on the streets, and in their gatherings, the Jewish Community Center functions in Spanish, and the keen intellect of this community combines a love of Israel, a love of the United States, an intense intellectualism, and a lifestyle of artistic expression and exquisite cuisine. For me, this is the start of a complex 4-city Southern California tour, and I feel blessed it has begun here in beauteous, ocean-stroked, sun-toasted San Diego, L'Chaim, La Jolla. Now, you're not seeing what I'm seeing, because right on the other side of this camera, I'm on the top of a mountain looking across to other mountains, and it's a beautiful, beautiful view. I wish you had it. Next, before I depress you with details of our nation's new nightmare, I have special guests, and this includes one or two of America's most valuable and effective attorneys. I say one or two because one can't make it. So we open with Richard Heideman, the community's most muscular, international jurists. Richard, you have so much consequential litigation popping. I note that the United Nations designated outreach to terrorism, namely UNRWA, has been excluded by the Trump peace deal from directly participating in Gaza aid and reconstruction. You're suing this corrupt organization with landmark litigation. Update us on this case and other major cases you have active, and by all means, tell us why this type of work is so important. Take it, Richard.
Thank you, Edwin. It's good to be back with you, and I appreciate it. Speaking of UNRWA, so UNRWA was established by the United Nations specifically to deal with what one should be referring to as Palestinian, shall we say, refugees who left Israel for whatever reason, voluntarily or they were forced out at the time of the War of Independence. Any other refugee, as I've said previously here on your show, Edwin, any other refugee in the world is resettled into a country. They get passports, they get housing, they get food, they get schooling for their kids, they get a wholesome new life. Only if those people are from the West Bank of the Jordan River, or they are from Gaza itself, or they are in Lebanon or in Syria, are they kept in camps. They're called refugee camps. This has been orchestrated by the United Nations through UNRWA, which has built this whole infrastructure designed to keep these people down instead of lifting them up. Moreover, any other refugee in the world, once they're, shall we say, resettled, they're no longer considered refugees. As it relates to those who are counted by UNRWA, if they only counted the grandparents who might have left Israel in 1948 or 1949, maybe there would be a few 100,000 people classified under UNRWA. But UNRWA has instead adopted a definition of including all of the children and grandchildren of those original grandparents, which has blossomed into between 5 and 6 million people, all getting aid and all being kept down. This is being enforced just up to, but including and even since October 7th, because there's this effort to keep people from Gaza, keep people on the West Bank of the Jordan River, living in Judea and Samaria, keep them down. Palestinian leadership from the Palestinian Authority actually works to ban and bar and deter and threaten people who want to leave for a better life. One of the reasons they do it is because this list of 6 million people allows lots of people to be employed by the United Nations, all focused through UNRWA. Now let's move over to the corruption. UNRWA was corrupt long before October 7th, long before October 7th. It just simply came to light as a result of October 7th. The Trump administration is absolutely right in not including corrupt UNRWA or their employees from getting benefits from the United States or benefits from others as a result of what has to go on in order to provide humanitarian aid for people since October 7th. Let's talk about the litigation. So friends of ours who are excellent lawyers in New York filed the initial case against UNRWA. They did it on behalf of non-Americans under a statute called the Alien Tort Statute. This case was filed in federal court in New York. The Biden administration filed a statement of interest that said that UNRWA has immunity. The Trump administration came in and reversed that and said, no, Judge, UNRWA doesn't have immunity. Unfortunately, in that case in New York, the judge recently issued an opinion dismissing the original case that was filed on behalf of these non-Americans on the grounds of UNRWA having immunity. That has just been appealed within the last week. Now, our case was filed not on behalf of non-Americans, but only on behalf of Americans. We filed it in federal court in Washington, D.C. It's pending. And just to show you the kind of games that are played, there's a rule, there's a practice that when you sue somebody in federal court, you send to the lawyers on the other side a notice that says, hey, we filed a lawsuit against you, as opposed to having to serve you through all kinds of shenanigans under the rules. Will you accept service? And the lawyers from UNRWA have told us they won't accept service. So we're in the process of serving them now. They will then come in and file a motion to dismiss, surely, on immunity grounds. We will oppose it, and the federal judge handling the case in D.C. will have to determine that issue. If the judge rules the same way as in New York, then that's one thing. If the judge rules that UNRWA's immunity doesn't apply, there will be what's called a split of the circuits, which allows a matter as a rule and practice to then eventually get up to the Supreme Court. Let's move beyond just this litigation. Our case was filed, as I said, on behalf of 200 American victims. These same victims, we've sued for them: Iran and Syria, North Korea. All three countries are on the State Department list of state sponsors of terror. We've alleged in our lawsuits that they have provided material support to Hamas as well as to Hezbollah. And the judges will have to eventually get to the stage of ruling on whether we're entitled to a judgment. We anticipate a judgment against Iran. We anticipate a judgment against the Syrian Arab Republic. As it relates to North Korea, weapons of North Korea were found in Hamas tunnels, and North Korea provided infrastructure for the cement operation that went into the tunnels, both the Hamas tunnels and the Hezbollah tunnels. So that will be presented to the court. In addition to the UNRWA case and against Iran, Syria, and North Korea, we are working on the case that has been filed against the Binance, the crypto firm, which already has been found to be responsible for violating U.S. law by the U.S. Department of Justice. And the head of Binance was hit hard, but the president just pardoned the head of Binance. We'll see what that means. I can't comment further because that matter was filed under not the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, but rather filed under the Anti-Terrorism Act. And that case will be litigated, is being litigated, and we'll see how it goes. Let me talk about the bigger picture, if I may. Can I keep going for a minute, Edwin?
By all means, take an extra moment to tell us why these important cases just go beyond the courtroom. But before you do, and we really want to hear that, I would just like to comment on some of what you've said. You know, my parents were from Poland. They were Holocaust survivors. They were in a DP camp. They waited 2 years for a number. When they came to the United States, I was born in Chicago. I'm an American citizen. I'm not a refugee. They were refugees in the DP camp. They ceased being refugees once they got to the United States. Under UNRWA and this corrupt United Nations policy, a person from the Jewish Palestine area in 1948 and all his or her descendants become officially refugees. That means they could be born on a hilltop in a mansion in La Jolla, just down the street there in El Cajon, which I'm looking at just near the mountains. I'm sure Rocky knows where that is. And they're officially refugees, even though they're living in the lap of luxury. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians, the Rohingyas, the people from Sudan, Ukrainian refugees, all these other people are under the normal rule, which is the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. You're so right, and I'm so happy that you have sued UNRWA, and I'm astonished that you have to pay $300 to a process server to actually find these guys having lunch. And when they come out of the washroom, saying, "Excuse me, sir, here's your process. And if you need a good process server, let me know. I've used some of the best." So Tell us why this is important, what you're doing outside the actual courtroom. How does this affect our actual community?
Well, it allows us to address the court of public opinion. When we file a lawsuit, we also try to educate people about the issue, not only through the litigation, but through dialogue like we're having now. Let's stay with the issue of Palestinian refugees, okay? Our grandchildren at their school last year, right here in the Washington area, they had a teacher who was wearing design of Israel. And she introduced herself and said she's a Palestinian refugee. What does that mean? That means that a grandparent was on the list, parents were on the list, she and her siblings are on the list, her children will be on the list, and they're all getting money for being on this list. They're all getting benefits, and they claim to be Palestinian refugees, no matter where they are living. It just makes no sense. This is a hate-filled approach of the United Nations that goes along with the United Nations having singled Israel out now for almost 80 years. When the United Nations adopted the Zionism equals racism definition and resolution in the 1970s, they called Israel an apartheid racist criminal state. They retracted that, shall we say, in the 90s, but here it is back in front of us. This is a whole campaign paid for by the United Nations, sponsored by the United Nations with UN staff and UN committees and UN budgets. So when you talk about Palestinian refugees, they're all getting all this money. They're all being paid to yell from the river to the sea. Most people don't know what that means. Let's just define what it means. The river they're talking about is the Jordan River. The sea they're talking about is the Mediterranean Sea. What's in between? The state of Israel, as well as Judea and Samaria, the ancient homeland areas of the Jewish people for thousands of years. That whole issue is being pursued when they yell free Palestine from the river to the sea. What they're really saying is we want a Judenrein or no Jew in the territory. Let me expand that for a moment. I'm not aware, maybe I'm wrong, somebody will probably write me afterward. I'm not aware of one Jewish person on the UNRWA list, not one. And what does Mahmoud Abbas say? No Jews are allowed to hold land in Israel. People have been killed, assassinated for selling land to Jews in the area that the Palestinian Authority claims to be it. I want to go to the bigger picture because it doesn't just apply to the land issue. We have taken in our law firm, as you well know, a zero tolerance approach. Years ago, I gave speeches about the need to take a zero tolerance approach as it relates to seeking justice and accountability, using litigation, using advocacy as a deterrent. But it's not just about terror. It's not just about anti-Semitism. It also has to address boycott issues. We cannot let the world get away with these boycotts. There's a whole regime of laws in the United States against boycotts. We have to invoke them. The universities that Elisa has sued through the Brandeis Center, the entities and organizations that the Lawfare Project through Brooke Goldstein has sued, and in other efforts of different organizations, Stand With Us Legal does it as well. These lawsuits are all important, and the work that private law firms like my own are doing and have been doing for almost 25 years, we think they are important tools in a toolbox that has to be funded and expanded. Why? Because everybody wants these cases to be brought pro bono. Everybody wants these cases to be brought on a contingent fee. Well, not every case is going to result in a victory or a collection or an award. And therefore, big law firms sometimes allocate resources for pro bono work. but there's only so much that can be done. So my suggestion to you, Edwin, is perhaps we're out of time today, but in pursuing justice and accountability, in providing a real deterrent factor to terrorism, to hate, to anti-Semitism, to what is better called anti-Jewish racism and hatred, bigotry against the Jewish people around the world. We need to really provide the tools. That means people power, that means funding, that means PR firms, that means taking this zero tolerance approach. And I conclude with this. If October 7th taught us anything, it taught us not only to stand ready, to be ready, but also to respond strongly. We are not, as a former prime minister of Israel once said, we are not weak-kneed people. We have the right to be proud of our heritage. We have the right to defend our good name, and we have the right to praise who we are, where we come from, where we are going, the contributions we've made to the world, and our right and entitlement to stand proudly as a people, to worship any way we wish, to applaud anybody we want to applaud, to speak freely against anybody we want to speak against without defaming them, and to support any political party that we want to support at any time. Those are inherent rights as an American. But the inherent right of an American with access properly to the courts and to the court of public opinion must be supported and encouraged. Zero tolerance means a lot of work, a lot more than is ongoing now. So, Edwin, thank you for having me. I hope this is helpful. I hope it motivates some people to think more deeply, more progressively, to use a term that some people don't like, more progressively about what can be done in seeking justice and accountability, in taking the zero tolerance approach, and in mandating that we seek to do all of the things we can do in court and in the court of public opinion and in advocacy with Congress and with the governors and with mayors. Speak very directly. Let's not hold back. We have the right to defend our good name.
All right, Richard, you have said it well. And just to summarize everything you said, it all constitutes and equals the so-called new conceptia that was born in the ashes of October 8th, when the Jewish people and Israel realized it was better to be alive than to be loved. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our second guest was to be Eliza Lewin, one of the most talented and resourceful litigators and organizational leaders of the Jewish community. You know her from her many decisive legal cases and her expansive accomplishments at the Brandeis Center, which vigorously defended Jewish rights in court and at the policy level. But Eliza has been caught in the government shutdown and her flight is delayed. So she's not going to be here. So we're going to proceed with the show. We're going to bring Eliza in next time, but I'm going to give you a sneak preview. Eliza has just become the president of a new organization called CAM, and we're going to be talking a lot more about what CAM is doing for the Jewish community and doing for America in representing our democracy. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as our world continues to burn, and in so many places, item one, the big one, the United States, as we have known it, is finished unless an immense blocking effort occurs. Even if America can survive its coming civil war, it does not change the fact that the second Holocaust is now in full swing. If you have closely studied the landscape of centuries of Jewish destruction and the upheaval of empires, as I have for almost 60 years, you can appreciate the irresistible centrifugal forces of history which cannot be stopped from seizing the trajectory of human events. The hills and valleys of prejudice, the mountaintops of power, the storms of destruction and the gullies of devastation. I see them all too clearly. Civilization irrepressibly allows the uncivil to collide with the civil like matter and antimatter, which when they come too close cause one or the other to be destroyed. As previously stated on this show, the Democrat Party has been swallowed up almost completely by the radical, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-capitalist, and anti-American radical left. It's one thing to suspect you have cancer. It's another thing to receive the official diagnosis. And we got that diagnosis last Tuesday. The Democrat old guard, such as Nancy Pelosi, Gerald Nadler, and many others, have announced their retirement. Soon Chuck Schumer will realize he will be primaried in just a few years and will have to exit public life. Moderates, including presidential quality men like Senator John Fetterman from Pennsylvania, have been warned. They too will be primaried and exiled for their moderation and even their support of Israel. The Democrats are the oldest, most violence-prone, racist-stained political party in the history of the world. The Democrats are responsible for British chattel slavery being retained and expanded in this country. Their armed wing was known as the Confederacy, and they started and fought the Civil War. Slavery was defeated by Republican Abraham Lincoln, the abolitionist, until a Democrat assassinated him, ushering in a resurgence of democratic racism. That led to Jim Crow laws that inhibited the black vote, which was a constant effort by the Democrats, also known as the Dixiecrats. Black educational access and black equality per the 14th Amendment was stymied at every turn. After the Confederacy was defeated, the armed terror militia of the Democrats was the KKK, which lynched blacks in public executions from Alabama to Minnesota, and in not a few cases actually burned them alive at the stake. These Democrats became the so-called Dixiecrats of the 20th century that opposed the civil rights laws, the voting rights laws, and it took President Kennedy invoking the Insurrection Act in 1963 to plow right through Governor George Wallace, blocking the school front door and to allow black students in. The Insurrection Act has been, by the way, invoked several dozen times by prior presidents to enforce federal law, and you're soon going to see it again. The Democrats were not only the racists that created America's record of African slavery, but they created the Trail of Tears that destroyed the defeated Indian nations and their families who were forced to move from place to place. Democratic judges such as Oliver Wendell Holmes opened the floodgates to eugenic genocide in this country when the Supreme Court ruled that 3 generations of imbeciles was enough, ushering in 60,000 forced surgical sterilizations because they did not match the white, blonde, blue-eyed stereotypes idealized by the eugenics movement. It was the Democrats and their Confederacy-loving President Woodrow Wilson that re-enlivened the Ku Klux Klan in the 20th century. It was Wilson who was persuaded by National City Bank to invade Haiti and assist the French in their rape of the Haitian economy that has created the island mess we know today, and in the process built the Eiffel Tower on the bank interest, get this, that Haitians paid for their own freedom. That was money they had to deposit into the Crédit Industriel and Commerce Bank linked to National City Bank. And this extortion was backed up by Democrat Woodrow Wilson, who ordered the United States Army to invade Haiti to ensure those bank deposits would be made to France for their own freedom. Forget not, it was the Democrats that put Japanese Americans in concentration camps during World War II. It was Democratic President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the one that my parents idealized and loved, that allowed the Nazis to expand commercially to repay Wall Street for the Versailles-era debt. It was FDR who did not lift a finger to save one Jew in Europe. Not one railroad track was bombed. Not one concentration camp was liberated. And he instructed the consulates in Europe to admit as few Jewish refugees as humanly possible, those escaping Nazis. The blood on your Democratic hands bleeds from the immolated past experienced by Native Americans, Africans, Haitians, Jews, and so many others. It's as my friend in the Democratic Party, a great historian in Florida, told me, well, we don't lynch people anymore. But today, this dangerous, radicalized Democratic Party is so infused with hate and rage, they elected an attorney general in Virginia, Jay Jones, who openly chatted that the Speaker of the House should get 2 bullets so he could piss on the grave, and then that his 2 children should die in their mother's arms. And yet the entire leadership endorsed his candidacy, and the Democratic voters, they didn't care. Why? Because these Democrats are blinded and consumed by rage, hate, derangement over Donald Trump. Right now, today, they would vote in the Boston Strangler over a perceived Trump candidate. But the big one is the election of Zohran Mamdani. He has no mandate, as he falsely claims. He garnered only 50.4% in a 3-way match of admittedly awful candidates, Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa. The Democratic base now hates Jews and hates Israel, even if that base is populated by golden calf Jews who think the train thunders down the track for someone else, not for them. And yes, a third of confused golden calf Jews in New York voted for this man who hates America and who wasted no time after the election not thanking the city for his election, but stirring up class warfare like any other Marxist. He claims to be a socialist, but he's only 2 vodkas away from being a pure communist. You'll see it soon. You are witnessing and shall witness an entire armada of local Islamists, socialists, and other hate America types hijacking the Democratic nameplate, running for every local office you can imagine, from city council to local board of education to statewide office, worming their way into the political ecosphere, rising through the ranks and preparing to take over in 1 or 2 electoral cycles. Before the next decade even begins, their campaigns will be financed by an uncle or a cousin, and his money may well come from some unseen, illicit Muslim Brotherhood or Qatari source, if not from the dangerous nonprofits such as Soros Open Society, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, or the Pritzker family. Remind me never to stay in a Hyatt hotel. Mamdani's biggest funder during this cycle was CARE. Linda Sarsour has told us that. CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. Of those who lived in New York for less than 5 years, 85% of those people voted for Mamdani. As the next 1 to 2 years unfold, I'm not talking about an over-horizon occurrence. I'm talking about right now. As the next 1 to 2 years unfold, electoral norms will no longer apply. The media, as we know it, will be increasingly irrelevant, as some 78% of the youth get their news not from traditional news outlets, but from TikTok, Instagram, and other social media. Hundreds of thousands of bots will increasingly control what we see, what we believe. It will be a battle between acquired knowledge and entrenched ignorance for a generation that does not know World War II, does not know Vietnam, does not know September 11th except in a page in a quickly skimmed book that they forgot already. Groups of people will now move across state borders. They will register to vote locally and elect the people that they want to bring us down and then move to the next jurisdiction. AOC will run for president. You could put money on it, and if elected, Mamdani will probably become her Secretary of State should she win. The so-called Charlie Kirk movement, defending American principles, is months away from being a force to reckon with. Violence as an instrument of political force will continue to expand in American cities as local Democratic officials encourage it with hate rhetoric by refusing to deploy the police to stop it or applauding it outright. This is how it unfolded day by day in Nazi Germany when the stormtroopers rioted and committed acts of violence and boycott unchecked. There will come a moment in some intersection in Los Angeles or Chicago or maybe Boston where local Democratic authorities will try to stop or arrest federal agents, whether it is ICE or any other group. That clash of authority, local versus federal, that moment, that will be the start of America's civil war. We will probably lose this war because the agitators are trained, bold, and ready to be bailed out by millionaire sympathizers, local judges created by local, highly politicized atmospheres will poison our sense of justice even more than it's been poisoned. Ladies and gentlemen, we will confront the bad ideas and movements with truth and legal resistance until they stop us. Good luck, America. We'll need it. In a year, you will remember what I said today. And now, having left out 99% of everything I wanted to say, I conclude this expression to take your questions. We have so many questions. I'm going to start with the watch party in the villages. What's the chances your predictions are right? 80%. Richard, what's the chance my predictions are right in your view?
Well, I'm biased, Edwin. When you speak, I listen. So if you've said it, I think it's almost 100%.
Yeah, I was going to say 100%, but I thought I would be a conservative and say 80. My big problem, I say to you, Richard, and I say to my audience and the people in the villages who are watching this right now, my big problem is I haven't been wrong yet, and that's quite disturbing. Watch party in Newton, Massachusetts. Can the second Holocaust be averted? Answer, no, it can't. Why can it not be averted? As I was telling my friends in San Diego last night, because no matter how much we want to avert it, we are not in Canada where it's going to break out in a vengeance. We are not in Belgium. We are now in London, which is falling as a democratic nation. We are not in Amsterdam. Things are upside down. Who would believe that right now the Jewish people in Europe, our best friends, are Germany, Hungary, and Poland? Who would even believe such a thing? But what we can do is we can mitigate against it. What we can do is we can fight against it. What we can do is we could keep it away from us as far as possible. And we could do everything within our power to make sure that this second Holocaust does not achieve the proportions of the last one. Thank you, Newton, Mass. Sorry for my response. Watch party in Chicago. Should Judge Boasberg be impeached? All right, I'm going to answer this question directly. I'm going to specifically exclude my guest, Richard Heideman. He has nothing to do with my response. And here's my answer. I think it's about 15 judges have been impeached by the House of Representatives. 8 were actually removed from office by the Senate. Remember, if you're impeached, it's just an indictment. Then comes a trial in the Senate. About 8 of those 15 were subsequently removed, and I think maybe 3 or 4 resigned, but a total of 15 have been impeached. I believe Judge Boasberg should be impeached, and I believe that he has been one of the most flawed judges and the most consequential of misconduct judges in the United States. Judge Boasberg has ruled against Trump in bizarre ways, including on his attempt to deport gang members out of the United States. He served on the FISA court, that's the Special Security Court, and that court is the most secret and consequential court in the land, some would say. And he tolerated a fraud from the conspirators against Trump, and then he let the guy off by saying, well, you can practice law again, even after falsifying a form. And now it turns out that this is the judge who worked hand in hand with the FBI in Arctic Frost. And Arctic Frost was this FBI Biden scheme to secure the telephone records and the whereabouts and geolocation of virtually the entire Republican leadership. Hundreds, over 400 subpoenas were signed and executed, and including those that violated the speech and debate clause of the United States Constitution. This is a bad guy, and this guy needs to be impeached. The articles of impeachment were put forward by Representative Gill some months ago. He was dissuaded from going forward with them, but now there are so many outraged senators and representatives who have come under the thumb of this Arctic Frost deep state spying operation with a weaponized criminal justice system, that they're now in favor of it. I have a long track record of investigating judges. I would say if you go to the FBI homepage, they will tell you that among their top 10 investigations in history is Operation Greylord, where they investigated a group of corrupt Chicago judges. And this was done by getting a downstate Illinois judge to come up with a tape recorder hidden in his boot, and he taped them. It was all about bribery, and that entire investigation was initiated by me personally when I had an interview with the prosecuting attorney in Cook County and asked him, how is it that we know that all these judges are taking bribes and nothing is being done about it? And that started Operation Greylord. I have a lot more to say about this in the future, but I think what we're seeing is we're seeing bizarre legal rulings by highly politicized judges. For heaven's sakes, a local acting traffic court judge in the city of Chicago ruled that Donald Trump could not be on the ballot in Illinois, thus stopping him from running for election until she was defeated 9-0. Thank you very much, Watch Party in Chicago. I'm glad it came from you because you all know what I did with Operation Greylord. Mark in Vancouver. Who does Richard Heideman think should be sued who has not been sued? Okay, now that I've finished with judges, let me bring in Richard Heideman again. Richard, who should be sued who has not yet been sued?
Well, I'll give you one example. There's a nonprofit in the United States called World Vision. They had an operation ongoing in Israel, and the head of that operation distributed millions and millions of dollars to Hamas. Hamas used that money to fund terror against Americans, against Israelis, and against others. We all know about Hamas. This person tied to World Vision was actually found guilty in court and sentenced in Israel. World Vision, the U.S. charity, which I'm told runs lots of money through its accounts, World Vision says, well, not us, but they hired this person. They had a responsibility to supervise this person. And World Vision materially supported Hamas. World Vision money supported Hamas. That's an example of an entity, a nonprofit, a charitable organization that has provided material support to Hamas, which they deny, but nevertheless, a U.S. jury should determine whether or not they should be held accountable under the Anti-Terrorism Act and other statutes here in the United States. That's just one example. We've had investigators from Israel and around the world bring us dozens of cases with hard evidence that they've amassed about U.S.-based entities that ought to be held accountable in U.S. courts. I hope, Edwin, I've answered your question. Thank you.
Yes, and you answered it well. Now, our next question here is from Jimmy in Los Angeles. What is the next big city to fall to socialists? The candidates are Seattle, where the mayor candidate has actually stated too much land is owned by corporations and must be distributed to the public and or the state. Portland, of course. Paterson, New Jersey. Watch it. Austin, Texas. Watch it. Minneapolis. Watch it. Coming your way. Marina in Turkey. Is Israel committing genocide in Gaza? Israel's not committing genocide in Gaza. And I have here the treaty on genocide, which was written up by a Polish Jew on the campus of Duke University in 1943. And it specifically says that genocide in Article 2 means any act with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. Okay? And they give various methods, including deliberately inflicting on the group conditions calculated to bring about its physical destruction, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Kill Israel. All of that is a specific genocidal call. And it says right here in Article 3, subsection C, 3C. I want Richard to check this out, Rocky too. Direct and public incitement to commit genocide. When this show is done, I want to sit down with the lawyers and I want to find out whether or not the actual orchestrated attempt to destroy the Jews of Israel is in fact genocide. And I want to find out if From the River to the Sea or any support thereof or boycott thereof is a violation of Article 3 of the Genocide Convention. Thank you, Marina, very much. Sal in Panama, that's the nation of Panama. When will the Israel-Iran war resume? Pretty soon, any day now. Iran has reconstituted or is in the process, of reconstituting its secret nuclear program down the street from one of its destroyed laboratories. Its new location is called Pickaxe Mountain, and they're going to try to reprocess their 400 kilograms of highly enriched 60% uranium. They have refinanced Hezbollah. They're doing everything they can to encourage Hezbollah to take up arms. Lebanon is not capable of subduing and disarming Hezbollah. Israel is bombing as we speak. And so basically, it's all a question of time. There will come a moment when the people in Iran who say that war with Israel cannot be avoided, when Israel will take preemptive action. Okay, let me see what else we have here. We have a question from Rocky. How do we confront the legacy media and the hidden anti-Semitism on the BBC, CNN, and the rest? And the answer is, A, stop watching these guys and get your buddies to stop watching these guys because they know exactly how many people are watching, and that means money. CPM, cost per thousand, advertising. And the broker they get, the smaller they get, the smaller they get, the broker they get. And what's happened is CNN and MSNBC now had such a deserted audience base. They're now catering to an ever smaller, more condensed Israel hating, Trump hating, and America hating crowd. So that's how it's done. Let's see. Here's one from Fort Worth, Yahoo. I've got 3 minutes before I get out of here. I'm very curious, and I do not know much about history, but the election this week in New York City makes me wonder if any and how many Jews might have voted for the Nazi Party in September 1930 when they won 18% of the vote in National Parliament. Well, since I wrote about that and did some of the original calculations, which are now relied upon in my book, The Transfer Agreement, which was published in 1984, I can tell you that Hitler in November of 1932 got 38% of the vote. And I believe that many Jews felt so threatened by him, that German Jews, that they tried to support the regime. In addition, there was a group of Jews who fought in the trenches of World War I, and I know that they voted for him. And in 1934, in a plebiscite, German Jewish organizations were once again talking about voting for him. Here's another question from Martha. She's here in San Diego. Is Europe waking up? Are any countries battling this? Do we have any allies to help prevent the Holocaust? As I said, the strangest thing that I or Richard or anyone can behold is that the safest place for a Jew right now is not on the streets of London, not on the streets of Paris, but on the streets and byways of Hungary and of Poland and of Germany. Guys, I wish I could do more, but I've just got to go. So we're out of time. Hold for my closing word of wisdom, just 1 to 2 minutes away. But first, I want to thank my very, very knowledgeable guest, Richard Heideman. I know Eliza will be back with us next time. Plus, I thank my talented international team, including Virginia and New Jersey, Lance in Michigan, and Richard in the Philippines, as well as many others in numerous additional cities around the world. I'll see everyone back here in 2 weeks at 3 p.m. Eastern. You want to be a friend of the Edwin Black Show? Go to the edwinblackshow.com/support. Keep me independent. You want to hear me in person? Consult my events page at edwinblack.com. Until then, head over to any Barnes & Noble in the USA or any Amazon, Walmart, iTunes, Google Books, Kobo, Audible.com platform in 190 countries across this roiling, toiling, boiling planet, where you can find any of my 325 book editions, such as IBM and the Holocaust, and my latest, Israel Strikes Iran. You want an autographed copy? Hit edwinblack.com and click books. Get access alerts. Participate live in future shows at theedwinblackshow.com. My friends in San Diego, go to theedwinblackshow.com, click subscribe. You'll see a much enhanced and exquisitely produced version of this very show. Watch it again and prior episodes by subscribing to our YouTube channel at The Edwin Black Show and click that notification button like tens of thousands of others have. Follow me at Edwin Black Book on X as well as Facebook. And now for my closing word of wisdom. No one can any longer exist in the shadows. Step out and raise your torch high. I'm zooming out from the mountaintops above La Jolla and San Diego. Bless all of you. Pray for all that is unfolding before our very eyes.